You're about to enter into a new world of knowledge, curiosities, and high strangeness. This is a podcast of Straight Up Strange Productions.
You're listening to Mysteries and Monsters. I'm your host, Paul Bestel. Texas has plenty of room for all manner of strangeness to lurk within its borders, from the north to the south and the east to the west. Joining me to discuss some of its stranger locations is Adam Lynch, host and creator of Houston Strange and co-host of The Weekly Creep with his wife, Dulce. But before we join Adam, don't forget you can support Mysteries and Monsters by signing up at patreon.com/Mysteries and Monsters. $4 a month gets you ad-free episodes, guaranteed early releases, bonus content, and more. And you can click the link in the show notes too. You can find Mysteries and Monsters across most social media platforms. Please subscribe to the Mysteries and Monsters channel on YouTube. You can also visit mysteriesandmonsters.com for episodes and news. You can also visit our exclusive merchandise site for t-shirts, mugs and more by visiting TeePublic or clicking the link in the show notes as well. Our intro and outro music are performed by the marvellous Weary Pines. Thank you as always to Dean Bestel for his wonderful artwork, and the show is produced by Mr. Brennan Storr of the Ghost Story Guys. The Lone Star State's stranger residents await us in the company of the fabulous Adam Lynch. The Lone Star State awaits us as I welcome Adam Lynch, the host of Houston Strange, to the show. Texas has more than its fair share of strangeness, from El Muerto, the infamous blue ghost on the USS Lexington, to the Galveston's numerous spectral inhabitants. As Season 2 of Houston Strange lands across the airwaves around the world, I am delighted to welcome Adam for his first appearance on Mysteries and Monsters. Adam, welcome.
How are you? Delighted to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Delighted to be in your company once again, my friend. Obviously, we've known each other for 2 or 3 years now through our various platforms and shows and other bits and bats that we do. So it's lovely to finally get a chance to speak with you about this wonderful and exciting new project you've had going for about a year. So welcome. Lovely to speak to you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, delighted to be here. Yeah, it has. It's been a surprisingly busy year doing this kind of stuff. Who would have known in-person interviews would have taken so long?
You only had to ask, for my friend. You only had to ask.
Yeah, it seemed like a great idea at the start, but no, it is. I still love doing it. But
yes. I mean, obviously with the show that you do with your partner Dulce, The Weekly Creep, you've kind of covered true crime and paranormal and strangeness in general. So what was the leap in regards to doing Houston Strange alongside it? Did you want to have no hours left in your week, Adam, or did you just think, I want to focus on some of the Lone Star's more famous and strange locations and stories? Yeah,
to be honest, there's a few different kind of things that all led up to it. Like with Weekly Creep, it's constantly ongoing. We just haven't been uploading. Thankfully, Dulce, who is my wife and co-host, wife first, by the way, no, she's just gotten a promotion recently and she's been traveling with, we both work for the same company, and so she left me in the dust. And so she's been away for weeks at a time. At the time when I started Houston Strange, I was working for a different company, and basically our schedules just weren't lining up. So for a lot of the time we're cohabitating, you know what I mean? Like, I might see her for an hour or two at some point in the day. Now, well, before she started traveling, it was like I might see her at work. Yes. Otherwise, it's like the rare time that our days off line up. So Weekly Creep, as much as we love doing it, it was just like, we also have to do laundry and regular people things. So it kind of got put on the back burner. But I was like, well, I've learned all this stuff now through Weekly Creep, and I'm not saying I've gotten... Well, no, I have gotten better, definitely, but I'm not saying it's quality or anything like that. But I wanted to focus more on the actual production end of it. And then we had to go back home to Ireland for we had a funeral.
Yeah.
And I had been, my grandfather got sick. I went home for 2 weeks or something like that before he passed away. And then we had to go back for the funeral. Yeah. And then another funeral shortly after that. But of course, probably the most typically Irish thing, it was the most fun. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And it was going back and being with everybody. And I said this definitely to Emma from Real Life Ghost Stories recently. It's the whole, like, and I'm sure you're the same. I don't know if it's changed that much, but like, you know, when you're there, like, you might text someone to just say like, oh, are you in? And then if they say, yeah, grand, and you're knocking at the door by the time they reply, you know, and you're going in for a cup of tea and you're just, you know, waffling on and just that kind of thing. And it was at that point we were debating moving back home full time, which obviously we didn't. And I was like, how do I bring this kind of level of community that I didn't realize for like 3 or 4 years I had been missing so much.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, look, I'm not doing myself any favors isolating so much in Houston. So I started putting myself out there a little bit. Probably sounds a bit cheesy, but that was basically it. Like, I was making friends, and the idea of Houston Strange ultimately is to build community.
Yeah.
To get weirdos together and get us telling stories. And hopefully, I think it's manifesting right now, because I did get a message recently about doing a talk at an event coming up in early 2026, which is like huge. And I'm also in the process of arranging like a ghostly kind of get together, like whether it's an investigation or just a big group tour. I'm not sure yet, but yeah, just people reaching out and kind of saying like, hey, we're also weirdos and we don't know where to go. So yeah, that's ultimately it. And like, I can like definitely say that whoever has been on the show, like now, I would consider a friend. And it's like, even if the episodes have ended, like we're still talking like weekly, and we're still very much in each other's sphere. So yeah, it's kind of cheesy, but like that's what I was going for. You know what I mean? To bring people together and selfishly for myself to be put in more of those kind of situations. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes, like you say, when you've got your personal circumstances, one of the worst things you can do, Adam, is just rattle around the house on your own, because you tend to form bad habits, speaking from personal experience. You know, you binge the entire season of River Monsters, perhaps, for no particular reason, even though you've seen it 3 times in various states of inebriation, shall we? And so it's good to have hobbies. I mean, obviously, when we're working this particular field as well, I think it's nice to be able to have that kind of safe space where people feel respected and listened to, and they can talk without fear of ridicule or disparaging comments being made. And I know there's a lot of us out there, as you mentioned, Emma, Real Life Ghost Stories is another one of our ilk, where we kind of throw our arms around people and say, it's all right, you can talk to us about this, because we're really interested purely on a personal level. We're not interested in how it can elevate ourselves or whatever. We just have a fascination with these topics and the way it makes people feel and what they've experienced. And like you say, Texas is such a big place, as I'm sure most people know. It's the biggest of the lowest 48. It's enormous. I mean, it still makes my eyes water to think that Texas can fit in Alaska twice, and there's hardly anybody lives there. And Texas has some of my favourite things over the years. As I mentioned in the introduction, Galveston is infamous both as a supernatural destination and also probably one of the first examples of natural disaster being misinterpreted by learned people, as the famous incident of over 100 years ago, which is a horror story all of its own. And anybody who doesn't know about that, I think I only found out about 10 years about that, Adam. I watched an incredible documentary about it, and it was just balmy what went on there. So Texas lends itself to strangeness. I mean, the Lubbock Lights is another one of my favourites. But I think Texas likes to show off, because there's about 3 or 4 different lights in Texas, because you've got Marfa, I think, as well, and there's a mountain that claims to have a spook light very similar to Brown Mountain as well. We've got Ghost Galore. You've got that lovely mashing up of sort of Tex-Mex legends as well. Characters like El Muerto and La Llorona. It seems to have a bit of everything, and that's even before you get to the big thicket and go looking for Bigfoot down there. So you're spoilt for choice, really, Adam. Yeah,
and ultimately, like my biggest struggle right now is just what's the word? Like having the, I guess, like credentials or whatever. Like that's probably not the right word, but like when I'm reaching out to people, if like the Instagram say is very small, there's like only a couple 100 people on there. So like a lot of the times when I'm reaching out, it's like, oh, hey, I do this podcast. Like, would you like to hop on? And it's just trying to get like taken a bit more seriously in that respect. Like I found like trying to get people to open up, and then they kind of go, oh, well, who's this? Like, you know, cowboy? Well, not cowboy. Who's this guy coming out? I have traded my Converse for cowboy boots to try and blend in a bit better. But no, like you mentioned the big thicket, and that's something that so on my like days off over the last year, I have spent a lot of time like literally just rattling around small towns. I do like photography and stuff, and like me and everyone else, right? But no, so like every now and then I'll kind of like treat myself to a day where it's like no phone, no TikTok or anything like that, and I'll just grab my camera and I'll rattle around and try and just get some nice photos or whatever. And I won't take mics or like the video camera with me, say. And I'll try and get chatting to the locals. And it's very much like small town Texas can be, it's either one or the other. They're either going to embrace you or they're going to look at you like, you're not from here. I don't know what you're selling. We don't want it. But I had a really interesting experience in a small town. The name is escaping me right now, but it's about another 2 hours to the big thicket from there. And I just wasn't doing that trip that day. But all of the people from there, I got talking to some lovely people in a tattoo shop, and they were saying like, yeah, we saw Bigfoot. Our cleaner saw Bigfoot. You know, they were saying like, watch out, you know, have you got a gun with you? This kind of thing. And I don't travel with a gun, but they were saying not for the people, but they were convinced that there was a jaguar in the woods, like not too far from, and it was like literally there's a tattoo shop, there's a Walmart on the corner, and they're going like they were earnestly saying like, don't go out there without a rifle because people have reported this large cat and and then Bigfoot obviously, which I'm not afraid of Bigfoot in theory. You know what I mean? I would give anything to have a Bigfoot encounter. So I wouldn't take a gun because I'm not one of those Bigfoot hunters. You know what I mean? But I did. I listened to them because as well there's a lot of snakes and stuff. So the big thicket is on my list, and I plan on whenever I have some time. I want to spend like 2 or 3 days out there. I've got a friend from Beaumont, and we're kind of hoping to double up because he just happens to have grown up in a haunted house, of course. So I'm going to try and double up, get my interviews with his family, and spend some time like really in the woods, because that's my kind of, it's just so different from what I grew up with, you know what I mean? Like, and that's kind of my big get. But in saying that, there is a Bigfoot episode coming up on Houston Strange that I'm very excited about. I have all the material, and I just need a little bit more so I can like kind of pull it together. But I was up in the Salado Creek in San Antonio, and it was like the guy told me when I was going up there, he's like, look, you're not going to think this is where you would see Bigfoot. Like, there's people everywhere. It's a loud, built-up area. And I was like, okay, well, like, what's a 3.5 hour drive? Like, let me just go, check it out. It's the middle of July. We were supposed to do it in the colder months, but obviously that didn't work out. So it's the middle of July. I'm standing in this riverbed, getting absolutely eaten alive by mosquitoes, doing this interview. But he showed me some, and again, it depends on where you fall on, like, your Bigfoot belief system, but some really interesting structures that, again, I was very skeptical going up. But when you're standing there in the middle of it and you have one of these structures around you, your mindset tends to shift pretty rapidly. And a lot of the stuff kind of starts to make sense. Like, the smaller sightings, say, that can be very easily discounted. But if you're a believer, they can be very easily believed, So, no, I'm trying to cover, like, the multitude here. It has been all ghosts right now. But what was funny was that I did that interview in the Salado Creek, and then the most recent episode, they don't come out chronologically as I do them. It's just kind of what makes sense at the time. The most recent episode ended up taking place in the Salado Creek in a haunted house. It's called Victoria's Black Swan Inn. Any like ghost adventures people would be kind of familiar with it.
Yeah.
And that actually happened by accident as well. Like, it wasn't even supposed to take place there. And late at night, it was like 3 a.m. I'm going around trying to like shoot some B-roll, trying to pretend like I'm a professional. And suddenly I start hearing like footsteps in the tree line. And I'm going like, that's an animal. That's a raccoon, or my biggest fear here is like feral hogs. It sounds so silly, but I've heard so many stories of people getting attacked by these pigs.
Yeah.
And again, I don't have a gun. I only have my camera. So as I'm standing there, what was interesting is I had actually just caught an EVP that I didn't realize because I wasn't, investigating. I was just literally getting some footage. So I captured this EVP, and then I go out the back, and every time I walk, the footsteps walk. Like, you know what I mean? There's whatever it is in the trees move. And every time I stopped and I would spin around with the camera, it would stop. So I'm getting more and more convinced that this is like, you know, a possum or something. I don't know. But anyway, then I, like a little baby, turned around. There's a huge spider beside me. And I was like, all right, I'm getting out of here. But it was a funny little tie over. And like straight away, there is that little thing in the back of your mind kind of going, this could be it. This could be Bigfoot. You know what I mean?
There are numerous encounters that are exactly that. And it's usually you can hear footsteps, you stop, they stop, you set off again, they start again, you stop, they stop, so on and so forth. So who knows? Just checking you out, mate. Might have been interested in seeing what's that strange thing he's holding that's not a gun.
Yeah, exactly. Why does he seem friendlier than the other one? No, or maybe just softer than the others. But no, and again, like I am very, again, I pretend to be a skeptical person, but I love the high strangeness aspect of things. So I'm like, my theory is if I'm in a Bigfoot situation, I might actually see like a banshee or something, you know, because that's more in my, I guess, lexicon of weirdness, you know?
Yes.
Yeah, but I've just been putting myself in strange situations more and more, especially in the last few months. So it's been interesting, yeah.
I mean, I'd always knew about certain places. I mean, the strange thing about Texas is it's usually UFOs that pulled me there when I was younger, Adam. Yeah. And then you start learning about everything else. I mean, obviously, I've had the pleasure of speaking with several Texan natives, Ken Gerhardt, Lyle Blackburn, Shelley Covington, Montana, who, strangely enough, when she appeared on my show, told me a very intriguing encounter that her husband had in the Big Thicket, which might be worth checking out before you go next time.
Yeah, I'm literally going to write that down.
But I'll send you the link later. And Shelley's great as well. But I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, and you were kind of we were all looking for things to watch and stuff. I stumbled across this guy called Russell Rush, who was a DJ in Texas. I think he was in San Antonio. And he was obsessed with the paranormal. And obviously, I'd never heard of this chap, but YouTube recommended it. And I ended up really falling down the rabbit hole with Russell and his team as they went around certain locations in Texas that I hadn't heard of. And so it was a great introduction to all that. And then sadly, Russell was diagnosed with a terminal illness and passed away 3 years ago. Too young. Far too young. But it was my first real introduction outside of the big places like Galveston, San Antonio, Dallas, Houston, the usual places. They were going to these little towns and cities in and around it that we never hear about outside of Texas. And I would imagine, like you say, because Texas is so big, there'll be people in Dallas who've never heard of certain places in the Big Thicket or other places over on the western side of Texas.
Yeah, I mean, I was just before we started recording, I was telling you I was helping the older lady across the road from me. I've been doing like a lot of work in Austin with some other groups. And so I kind of traveling back and forth, and then San Antonio for a few stories. But then also my mom flew into Dallas, and we have family up in Dallas, my wife's family. So I'm like, that's kind of, I guess you call it like the quadrangle or whatever. Someone will probably try and call it the Texas Triangle. Actually, I think it is. It's the Dogma Triangle.
But that time somebody had a hexagon.
Yeah, right. But yeah, whereas the older lady across the street, like she's from Kentucky, but she's lived here like a very long time. And she's never been to Austin or Dallas. And I'm like, you know, okay, that's wild to me. But then like I spent kind of 3 years just in Houston without really leaving. And I will never pretend to know where I'm going. Like I'm on Google Maps constantly and stuff. But one of the blessings of Houston Strange is that like most of the stories don't take place in Houston, and I get to have a little travel around. And oftentimes what I'll do is after I'm finished an interview or something, I'll take the back roads back and just kind of see where I end up, you know. Driving is like my favorite thing to do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It always has been. I've always been obsessed with like just long road trips. My dad and uncle, I drove up to Colorado in March to pick them up in Denver, and then we drove over to San Francisco. Fantastic.
Yeah.
But yeah, like recently enough, I was on literally like a Dukes of Hazzard dirt road, and I was kind of going like, oh man, maybe I should turn back, you know what I mean? But the cloud of dust behind me was so thick that I was like, I don't know if there's another car coming now or not.
Yes.
So I just like kept huffing it down. But yeah, ended up pulling over, and I ended up chatting with this local girl. She just saw me out my camera, and the camera's a great icebreaker, you know? And she just approached me, very lovely, strongest handshake I've ever had in my life. It was the most emasculating thing ever. But no, and then next thing she's going like, oh, there's actually a barbecue spot like just down here. Check it out. Amazing. Like $20, like huge plate of food. Best thing ever. And I still don't know the name of the town because I didn't see any signs on the way in or out. You know what I mean?
Yes. How do you know it was real?
No, and this is it. I don't even know if that lady was real. My hand certainly like felt the results. But yeah, no, so there's a lot of that, man. And like most recently last Saturday, Saturday before last, I got invited up to the Old Park Hotel in a place called Bollinger, Texas, which I'd never heard of before. And it was like a 6-hour drive, which of course I was like, yeah, absolutely, I'm down for. But every time I pulled over or like stopped anywhere, like I kept seeing on the map, like, no, Austin is right here, like Dallas is right here. I literally was so confused. So I was like, how am I so many hours in here? But anyway, we got to the Old Park Hotel, and it's just one of these fantastic sites, probably one of the most active places I've ever been. And that's, as far as I can see, that's the only thing around. But the guys were giving us the history on it. And like at one point in time, there was a 35,000 population town, I think. And it was bustling, and it was just railroad people, you know? And so that railroad is still used today. Like it's people from Houston will know, like there's never a day goes by you don't see a train passing by and you're just praying that it's not going to stop your lights, because you could literally be sitting there for a half an hour and it's just boom, 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 boom. So yeah, it's really easy to forget what's outside of those like 3 or 4 cities. And then when you're there, or certainly when I'm there, like again, I'm a bit of a romantic, you know what I mean? I do try and be like mindful when I'm in these places, and you can like literally feel the history, like, you know what I mean? Because a lot of it looks as you would have imagined it to look 100 years ago, you know? And it's just big, glorious ranches, and it just feels as far as the eye can see. And then there's like the big Texas sky is like, it sounds so silly, but because it's so flat in certain places, like sometimes it feels, you can understand why people fell in love with the place, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I think for people like us, Adam, you know, in Ireland and the UK, we're not used to seeing things that big, really. I mean, there are certain parts of our countries we can visit, and it's beautiful landscapes. But you can go to parts of the US. Texas is one. Montana is another one. I always used to wonder why they called Montana the Big Sky State. And I saw a documentary about it, and I thought, this is just, I could sit there all day and just look at the vista. I wouldn't need anything else to inspire me or entertain me. It's just jaw-dropping. And so I think for us, when we end up in these places, it takes our breath away because of the sheer scale of the actual locations you find yourself in. It is, like you say, as far as the eye can see. I was watching something the other week about Alaska, and I think Cliff Barrickman was doing some recon in regards to a Bigfoot case up there. And they did this one shot where he kind of came over this little hill, and he was literally like, I don't know, 100-mile view all the way to this enormous like mountain range at the far end of the horizon. And I was just like, I'd seen it before, but my mouth still dropped when I saw it. I thought, well, this is just, you know what I mean? You just, as far as the eye can see, it's just nature. It's incredible.
Yeah, and I think like as well, like the fact that like 9 months of the year it's 90 degrees or 30 degrees here, it's very easy to like, you know, like you're doing your daily stuff. Like it's very easy to forget that. And like Texas has a way of humbling people.
Yes.
In many different ways. But yeah, like just, and again, it's like me kind of being romantic and like leaning into the, you know, like I probably sound like I'm full of shit, but like I do try and like lean into like the more kind of creative thing, and like, because otherwise that's how I keep my mental health kind of in check. If I'm not doing like creative stuff, then I'm not in a good place, basically.
Yeah.
So again, it's that kind of mindfulness of being in these places. And yeah, I think humbling is kind of one of the words I would use, because I had an example, and this wasn't a paranormal thing. Well, it was, but it wasn't supposed to be. I was helping a buddy of mine. He's, I'm trying to remember when we last spoke. I know it was a while ago. I think that was before this happened. But anyway, I was helping a buddy on a photo shoot, and he goes, oh, it's going to be on my friend's ranch. not that far, like literally less than an hour outside of Houston, you know? And we go out there all day. He's like kind of, you know, nervous and frantic, and we're trying to, because we had arranged like models and help, all this kind of stuff. So I was kind of just, what do we need to get done? Let's get it done, whatever the case may be. And we drive my car. It's just a Subaru Forester, but this poor car has been everywhere now at this stage. And we were off-road going through these fields that had been, it's a black-owned ranch. And the guy who bought the original plot was a freed slave, right? And now this is his family still living on it. And over the years, as farmers have died off and moved on, he's just bought kind of more and more parcels of land. Like, it was honestly, like, I would love to go back up and spend more time with the family. They were absolutely gorgeous. But anyway, we're out in the middle of this field and the grass is up past the doors of the car. I'm the only one who had boots because I just happened to have my work boots in the back of the car. Threw them on. As I'm walking out, I'm literally like kicking. I don't know if you've ever seen what are the name? I can't think of the name of the spiders now. Wolf spiders, right?
Yes.
So they're not the biggest, but they're a lot bigger than what we have in Ireland. You know what I mean? Anyway, so there's like crickets and huge spiders literally like leaping out of my way as I'm like walking through, and I'm trying to not say anything because the poor model is in a white dress all the way down to her toes. You know what I mean? And I'm kind of like leading the way out. Anyway, we get there and everybody's sweating. We're all in bits, and by the end of the day, it was like the biggest creative collaboration that any of us had ever kind of done at that point. The results were immaculate. Like my mate's really, really talented. But at the end of the day, we're all just stood in this field and we're all kind of wrapped up and shooting the shit. And like that was one of those moments when we all just kind of stopped and we're like, man, look at where we are right now. You know what I mean? And we were all from different backgrounds. Obviously, John grew up on that ranch, you know what I mean? For him, he was kind of looking at us like, you nerds, like whatever. It's just my back garden. But it was, all of us had come from like different cities, different countries, whatever it was. And we were all just in this place, just looking around. And it was only a couple of days later, I realized that I had actually dreamt about that field. And it was one of only 3 premonitions that I've ever had. And, yeah, I had written it anyway. Yeah, so it did turn into like a paranormal thing, but like that was just a selfish kind of takeover. But yeah, anyway, that was one of those kind of moments that really stuck out, and you're just kind of going, man, like, you know, you're taken back to kind of what it could have been. This is also like, I do listen to a lot of like historical books and stuff. Like I'm listening to The Indifferent Stars Above right now, and I do find like when I'm listening to those things, I kind of take in a lot more of the nature visually when I'm in these places, and it's just like, yeah.
I mean, it's something that I'm always passionate about, and I think often this is the thing about the supernatural that gets overlooked for some people, Adam, is that often you'll come for the ghosts and find the history, and that gives a bit more of a richness to the experiences or the locations and the like. And I think that not trying to separate those out and leaving them to basically complement each other, I think gives a bit more oomph to certain locations and histories of strange occurrences in these places. And so, you know, as we've touched on a couple of times, as I mentioned, you've just recently done a couple of episodes about Galveston, which is, once again, one of those things. It wasn't the supernatural or weirdness that brought me to Galveston. It was a documentary about the tropical cyclone that hit there in the summer of 1900, which I'd never heard of till about 10 years ago. And it was really good because it gave this kind of background about how Galveston was the most forward-thinking city in Texas. It was going to be the future. This was going to be the place that would drive Texas as one of the newer members of the United States. Even, you know, it sounds crazy saying 125 years ago, but it was one of the newest states that had joined, because obviously it didn't join till sort of the mid-19th century. And it was just, this whole story was just, it was like a disaster film, because all these people going on about how brilliant this place is, it's going to be the future, da-da-da-da-da. And then nature went, hang on, I think I just need to humble you all. But the extent to what happened just blew me away. And I thought, how on earth is just this story not more well known? Not only on the sheer size of the cyclone that hit, the number of people that died, the amount of property that was destroyed. This was a cataclysmic disaster. And therefore, it doesn't surprise me in the slightest that Galveston seems to be one of the most haunted cities in the whole state because of that awful tragedy.
Yeah, I mean, because I don't think I had heard of it either until I actually moved here. And I grew up by the sea. I don't swim. I never learned how to swim. But again, it was one of those things, like moving here was, difficult for, a variety of reasons or whatever. But being a typical, like, I guess, I think I was 29 when I moved here. Like, I'm 34 now. Like, it's only been 5 years. But I was like processing a lot of emotions that I didn't understand. I still don't understand. But every now and then Dulce would come in and be like, do you need to go to Galveston? And I'd kind of be like, yeah, like whatever, like let's just get out for the day. But it was actually the sea that I didn't realize at the time. It was like, this is just something that I took for granted. Like you saw it when you were getting the bus home, you're on the train or whatever. Like it was just a constant that was always there. And so, yeah, we started going down and it was just nice to be beside the water, whatever. I'm a big hippie, I get. But then I got that book, Isaac's Storm by Eric Larson. Now, I've heard mixed reviews on Eric Larson stuff. I think he's a fantastic author. Like, I think it's historical narrative. Isn't that what they call it? Because it's not nonfiction, but he draws a narrative from letters, from like literally like postcards, diaries, everything. And he makes it into a much more palatable account and really immerses you in it, which is great for somebody who maybe doesn't want to just sit there and read figures on a book, on a page, So anyway, I read that book and I was like, my God, like this is the most mind-blowing thing ever. And something I'm always bringing it up, but he mentions at one point, like there was a rich English guy, actually. He was in a 4-story apartment building, which I think was high-rise at the time.
Yes.
And he was saying, I'm not leaving this island. I'm living in like the pinnacle of, the newest technology or whatever. And at one moment, he was like walking through his living room window, which had walking through his living room, which had this gorgeous window out looking over the bay. And the barometric pressure just dropped at that instant. And he was sucked out of the window, like a closed window, everything ripped out. And I can't remember whether the body was ever found or not, but that's the conclusion that they came to. Like he was literally sucked out, and that was pure barometric pressure. So I was like, oh my God, like if that was me, a few years ago, maybe I'd be thinking that was a paranormal event. But another like fact that sticks out from that book, and I'm sure I've probably quoted it in the episodes or whatever, but at one point the water rises like 4 or 5 feet in 4 or 5 seconds.
Yes.
And that took me back because I remember we had this lovely little beach back home. It was kind of secluded. So when we were kids, we could go down and like have a few beers and a barbecue and no one was bothering you.
Yeah.
And I've also been to a rave down there as well, which was fascinating.
Good man.
But I remember like we would go down, especially after a storm, because we'd go down, like I said, I couldn't swim, but we'd all like, we're just standing in the waves and like, just crashing around, being children, like.
Yeah.
But there was one day we were out and the water's kind of up to our waist and, big waves crashing over our head, great fun. And then one wave came in and the water was up to our necks.
Yeah.
And it just didn't recede. And like, thankfully, that's when I knew, all right, I need to get out of here. You know what I mean? But, and it was something so simple at the time. And then all these years later, I'm reading this in the account and I'm kind of going like, well, like those 4 or 5 feet, that's people's steps up to their house that they have already risen to get away from floodwaters. And now all of a sudden, within 4 or 5 seconds, the water's coming into your house. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The buildings just being ripped apart. And then entire buildings sailing down the street, picking up other buildings as they're going along, people hanging off rooftops. It was horrific. I think, now I might be wrong, but as far as I'm aware, it was it's still the biggest natural disaster in terms of body count in US history, as far as I'm aware. So yeah, like it was one thing reading the book and then going down to Galveston for like beach days and stuff. Then when I was lucky enough to go down and meet up with Jin, who's a tour guide down there, I like talk about being immersed in the story. Like the interview took place in the Hutchins Seeley building, which I hadn't a clue about before. And it was only about 2 hours into the interview because turns out the both of us can talk quite a bit. And she just happens to mention like, oh, by the way, like this building has a ghost. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Tell me the story. But it's a kind of a legendary story. Like the water, we were on the second floor, I think. I can't even remember now. But like the water was so high, it was 17 feet at that point, which is literally just underneath the windows of the second floor. And the legend is that this lady was sailing down, like being carried by the floodwater, and was lucky enough to land in a windowsill of this building. Either she broke it or it was already broken. Either way, she got into the building. They found a huge rope. She tied it around herself, tied it to, I'm assuming, a radiator or something, and just jumped back into the water and started dragging people in. And so the people, dragging people alive and dead in. Oh. And again, it's kind of a legendary story. They don't know who the woman was, basically. But what we do know is that the room that me and Jin were talking in at that time ended up being used as a temporary morgue. Yeah. Because of the amount of bodies. And now since, like, I actually took my mom down to Galveston while she was over here because she had watched of course she watched the videos. Oh, one of 16 people who watched the videos. No, but I brought her down and we did the tour, and I was telling her, Mom, this is a history tour. You're not going to get scared. It's going to be fine. And we literally just walked around and she was pointing out this building has, you know, this was used as a morgue. This was used as a morgue. It was just a horrific story. And yeah, like, just again, it's the immersive thing of it. Like you're in these locations. Some of the buildings are still standing. It's like tangible. You know what I mean? At that point.
It's remarkable, like you say. It seems to be one of those things. I don't know what it is. We have something similar here in the UK, Adam. We had a great flood in the 1950s, which came ashore around 3:30, 4 a.m. and it absolutely swamped Essex and Norfolk. And obviously, you know, it's after the war, so a lot of people were still living in sort of temporary accommodation and stuff. And basically, these people were flooded at 4 a.m. in the middle of winter with a freezing storm surge. And it's just never discussed in the UK at all. I think it was 1954. And it's one of those things that when you find, like with Galveston, when you come across it, you think, why do we not know about these things? Because the thing about Galveston, before we dive into some more of its ghosts, I mean, the estimates of how many people died that day are between 6,000 and 12,000. I think most people say around 8,000 died. The population was only 38,000 at the time. So you're talking a quarter of the population of the town are dead. It also demolished, I think, over 7,000 buildings. And so that left, of the remaining 30,000, a third of them were homeless. So essentially, half of the population within hours had either been killed or they'd lost their home. And you just think, that is mind-blowing on top of everything else as well. And so, if anywhere in the US should be haunted, it's got to be Galveston, because the other aspect of all this is it just compounds the arrogance of people as well. Because the whole lead up to Galveston was the fact that I think there was a little town further up the coast that had been destroyed twice by hurricanes. Yeah. And some people had left there and moved to Galveston to be safe and said, what we need here is a seawall. And they went, no, you don't. No. And then they started cutting the beach back to make foundations for all the buildings. So basically they just said to the hurricane, come on in, you're fine. And it's one of those things that, once again, you start messing with your environment, sooner or later it comes back to bite you on the arse.
Yeah, and I think, like, you really hit the nail on the head because, like you said earlier, like Galveston at that time was bigger than Houston and Dallas, as far as I'm aware. Business-wise, it was like the utmost. What's the word I'm looking for? It was the busiest town or city at that time, and I mean, like, even before it was Texas, it was it had the second busiest slave market at one point next to New Orleans. It's always compared to New Orleans because it's such a, like, that's the next, or was the next port for a long time. And I mean, realistically, like today, you can get from Galveston to New Orleans probably in about 8 hours. Like, so it's not that far, you know? But yeah, I think it was just arrogance. It was kind of like the Titanic thing, right? It's like, well, we've made the best thing that humans have ever made. Nothing is ever going to happen here. And yeah, one night just solved that problem. And then all of a sudden, like, now Houston is the thriving city that Galveston should have been, you know?
I suppose when you go there, you're spoilt for choice, really, as well. Because, I mean, I know of 3 or 4 very well-known locations in Galveston. Was there anywhere that you really wanted to get out of the way, first of all? Because it's one of those, I love a place that's got a haunted museum and a haunted cemetery, but it would seem that that's fairly standard for most places, though not many round here have a haunted graveyard. We've got a few haunted hotels and the like and such like, but Galveston seems to have a nice smattering of very different haunted places.
Yeah, like I was just happy to get in anywhere, to be honest.
Yeah.
Where especially when Jin was so accommodating, like, and has been so accommodating multiple times now. But then I focused more on in the second part of the Galveston series that I did, but I was able to get into the Hotel Galvez, or the Grand Galvez, I think it's called now, which was built 10 or 12 years after the disaster, which made like a lot of like naysayers like, oh, well, why would that be haunted? Because it's still a 115-year-old hotel, you know what I mean? And I think I hate to use the word liminal, but hotels are, in my opinion, like the ultimate liminal space, right? Nobody's staying there long term or anything like that. There's a lot of highs and lows. People are there to celebrate. People are there to mourn when there's family members and they're called back to town. Any amount of reasons why you're in a hotel. My wife is currently staying in like a Comfort Suites or a Hilton or something in New York, and her neighbor or her teammate is having issues with like her TVs coming on in the middle of the night, her curtains opening and closing. And like, there's no textbook reason why this room would be haunted, but we don't know what kind of weird energy is there. Cemeteries are something that I'm always kind of, oh, why would that be haunted? Like in my head, I'm like, that's where they go to rest. But I've had some really compelling stories sent to me by, I can't think of exact details right now, but one girl was saying like, basically she kind of snuck out of her house late at night. I think she's probably going to go and have a cigarette when she was like a teenager or something.
Yeah.
And she claims to have seen like a woman walk past her in the middle of the night and like, she was bluish grey and whatever. But when talking with Jin previously, she was saying, well, like the graveyards were also affected by the story. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
Like these were also flooded. They were like, you talk about New Orleans, like New Orleans is another case. I think Galvestonians hate being compared to New Orleans, but at the end of the day, they are very similar, like in looks and everything, the town. But you have again there, like anytime there's floods or bad storms, like the graves are being disrupted, like, So for me, the Galvez was like a pretty like triumphant little interview for like several reasons. First of all, like when I'm doing these, I'm trying to think of everything, like trying to make it look nice with like lights and stuff like that and the different camera angles and all. And I was lucky enough to get Melissa, and she brought me up to the legendary haunted room 501, which according to one grandmother on TikTok is not true, because she stayed there and she didn't experience anything. So I guess
solved.
That's debunked. Yeah. But no, so we sat there and we were there for a couple of hours, and it was like, aside from anything paranormal, I did hear some weird stuff, which Melissa was quick enough to go, oh, it was just in the hallway. So I was like, all right, whatever. But like my manual camera lens that I have, because I'm on a budget. So my B cam has a manual focus on it. And like as I was editing it, I watched the lens go out of focus in the room. You know what I mean? Weird stuff like that, small stuff happening. But like ultimately we were sitting there, it's a corner room. So you've got like your view back over the island and straight out to the sea. And we just were watching the sunset and telling ghost stories. And I'm like, this is it, man. This is living. Like, you know what I mean? And so, yeah, it was really, really nice. I'm planning on going back down to do more in the Galvez in the future. I didn't want Houston Strange to become Galveston Strange, so I'm trying to, get a few different locations before I return there. But yeah, I think that like I have unfinished business in the Galvez, definitely. It's too big for anybody to comfortably like investigate or be in every area, But she also sent me like some pretty compelling like ghost photos of people. Now, one, and I actually felt bad, I did kind of debunk. I was like, oh, I see what you're seeing, but also like there was like an archway and whatever. Anyway,
yeah,
that was just one out of like maybe 15 that she has, and she shows on her tours. And like, I don't know, man, like I do Photoshop, I edit stuff like pretty much constantly, and I'm kind of going, I don't know how they could have pulled this off. And yeah, so like, but they all seem like friendly spirits. And then, interestingly enough, I'll just throw this in because that room 501, the couple that I was working for last weekend, who are full-time investigators, podcasters, whatever, like they collect haunted gear, all that kind of stuff. And I do trust them. I've worked with them now, and they do very interesting stuff. It's not just let's go and shout in a big empty room. Like,
Good.
They really put in like the more kind of interesting efforts, you know, like to debunk and to get interesting stuff. But yeah, they said that they were in the room and they had pulled out like a spirit box or whatever they were doing, and they heard like a huge big slam on the door, like someone knocking. So of course, like they went out, they thought they were getting in trouble because I think they were on like Instagram Live or something at the time.
Yeah.
So they were like, oh, maybe we're making too much noise. Of course, they opened the door. This room's at the end of the hallway and there's nobody there. So in the course of trying to debunk, they were banging on the door themselves, and they realized it was the bathroom door that they had heard the knocking on. Because when I told them last week, I was saying, oh yeah, I thought I heard something in the bathroom, but it was like, you know, whatever. And straight away they were like, oh my God, it was the bathroom door. And I was going, I don't know if it was that, but it's definitely an interesting coincidence. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So there's more Galveston on the cards, though. 100%. Yeah.
So room 501, I think, at Galvez, is that the lovelorn lady that she's known as? Is it her? Audra? I think her name is?
Audra, which is like, again, those people that I was talking about last week, they were, oh, well, that story can't be proven, so it's not real. Whereas I'm on the other side of it, I'm kind of going, well, no, we don't have proof of it, but we do have people claiming to see her. So I don't know, have we created this? Like, and that's kind of part of what I like about like Houston Strange. Like, that's what I'm kind of, I don't know if I'm so subtly doing it, but like, even if these stories maybe don't have a real beginning and an end, they have been created now in the meantime. Like, you know what I mean? Like, people are still witnessing this stuff. And for your listeners, yeah, it's a really kind of, maybe not stereotypical, but like a very tragic ghost story. The lady thinks that her husband or fiance has been lost at sea, and she takes her own life in the turret, I think they call it. It's not a bell tower, but yeah, she takes her own life anyway. Very sad. But of course, then the husband returns 3 or 4 days later. They had gotten like, you know, lost in a storm or something like that. And now he returns and his wife is, you know, no longer. And so people do claim to still see her like going on her daily walks up to the turret to look out over the bay and wait for her husband's return. But there's other ghosts reported from room 501. There's a lot of kids in the Galvez, like ghost children, which again was one of those things that I had heard, but I was like, well, why would they be here? And then according to one medium, which I can't put like any faith in or whatever, but it was a nice kind of story. She reportedly said that these are all kids that were lost in the storm. There was the orphanage had been knocked down and carried off, and I think 98 kids perished. Yeah. And it was just very tragic. The nuns were doing their best to look after them, but like nobody knew how to handle this situation, obviously. So anyway, this one person said, no, these are the kids from the storm. They marched and marched for a long time through the sand, and eventually they found a castle, and that's the Galvez. That's her theory. So it's a nice, like, you know, why not? So I did include that in the story. I was like, no, well, at the end of the day, kid behavior is the thing that's most reported there. Yeah. And why wouldn't that be? Like, it's just a nice little kind of reason. But yeah, room 501 has like a little boy, and or supposedly has a little boy, and there's been like sick kids who have reported like seeing him in the middle of the night. And he's not malevolent or anything like that. He appears to just be like curious and caring. So I'm like, I love that side of the paranormal as well, you know, like, why not? Yeah. So I do kind of lean into some of those stories a little bit, you know what I mean? And until they can be disproved, I can't say whether they're there or not, you know?
Yeah. I think this is the thing as well, that regardless of the story, people are seeing something. Exactly. Whether Audra was a real person or not. I mean, this is often the thing that I think in this day and age, Adam, we're able to be forensic about this, because there are so many ghost stories from Britain and the island. There are essentially these kind of stories that it's always a lovelorn bride or a someone who's got the wrong information or thinks the worst has happened and does a does something terrible, and then the story gets even worse, and therefore this emotional tragedy has imprinted itself on the location. That happens all over the world, I think. However, that doesn't take away from the fact that people are seeing something. Now, whether that's Audra or somebody else, could be a maid, could be wherever, that doesn't take away the experiences that people are reporting. What we have to do is separate the story from the experience, I think. And it gives you a third level because, like you say there, yeah, we don't know the beginning or the end, and it might all be fiction. Often it usually is, and it's been flowered up and romanticised. Happens wherever. But there's something happening, and people are seeing something. Like you say, the orphan story is a bit strange, because I know about that particular incident, but not connected to the Galvez haunting, because that's one of those terrible things that happened in the cyclone. I think they were all tied together with rope, weren't they? And they were trying to walk through it, and then they were all, I think their bodies were all found on the beach the day after or something.
Yeah, some of them were even uncovered in Texas City, which I did, just on Google Maps I checked, and it, like, as the crow flies, it's 5 miles.
Wow.
Yeah, it was horrific. There was an older building, which was the boys' dormitory, I think. And so they moved everyone over into the girls' dormitory, which was the newer, supposedly safer building. And then, the nuns had them in there singing hymns and stuff like that. They were actually practicing. Like, it's one of those, like, horrifically tragic points from that night. Like, the kids were supposed to be performing, like, some sort of choir display, or what's the word, like concert, sorry.
Yes.
Like the following week or something. And so they were in there singing Queen of the Waves is like kind of like their theme song or whatever they had chosen, like from wherever the sisters were from. I can't think of the names right now. So yeah, they were in there practicing their hymns, and the nuns were kind of just nursing them and saying, like, we're all going to be okay. We're just going to say our prayers, sing our hymns, trying to distract them like you would for kids. Yeah. But at a certain point, like, the water got so high that the nuns were also dragging people in onto the second story window again. You know what I mean? And saving them. And then at a certain point, they just heard the building give way. And again, another horrific, very real part of this story is, like, the buildings weren't immediately submerged. So the nuns had, I think, clothesline. And I think they were just thinking, like, if we each take 9 of the kids, I think there was 10 nuns and 90-something kids.
Yeah.
We won't lose them. Like, you know what I mean? If we're in the water, we'll be able to drag them to safety, that kind of thing. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case. I think there was 3 older boys. The story differs because we do have their account, but they said that they had managed to wriggle out of the clothesline, and they hid in the rafters, and then I think eventually were able to grab onto like a nearby floating tree. And that's the only way they survived. But yeah, everybody else passed away. So again, it's kind of one of those things. Why would they be at the Galvez? The Galvez was built years later. But like, I personally now, like, I just released an episode, or I've been kind of releasing like mini stories because I've been getting so many lovely stories, and I really appreciate it. But it's Houston Strange is kind of it's very scripted, and then like I go between like here and the actual interview, and there's like different points. So these stories I didn't really know what to do with. So I was like, let me just put them out on their own as little kind of backup things to it. And I had someone who used to work in the spa at the Galvez, which is in the basement, which is supposed to be one of the more active locations. And she said that she saw a little girl just walking into the bathroom one day, or the restroom. And, she just looked up, saw her walking in, thought nothing of it. But then she didn't hear anyone coming out, and she was like, oh God, I hope she's okay. And she went into like, make sure she's not acting up in there or doing something, And of course she goes in, there's nobody there. And that was a very casual, like, I was just down there doing the books or counting the till or something like that.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but like, it also reminds me of the Stanley Hotel. Like,
yes, that
place is full of kids, supposedly. And this is going to out me as an absolute weirdo, but what I say is my only ever, quote unquote psychic image happened to me at the Stanley Hotel. We were there. Me and Dulce actually met in a Stephen King book club because we're nerds. And so the Stanley was always high up on our bucket list. And then our favorite one of our favorite bands is a band called Amigo the Devil. Anybody listening here, you need to go check them out because they're fantastic. So it turned out Amigo sold out to Stanley for a weekend. They have a function hall up there. So we were like, absolutely, this is it. We need to go.
Yeah.
So we go there anyway, and we did the tour, and I covered the Stanley on Weekly Creep because I was like, oh, this would be like a nice, easy episode for us, whatever. So I already knew the stories, and the tour guide, I don't know, maybe he just wasn't having a good day. He was a kid, and he just like, you know, it's kind of like, over here is where the ghosts happen. Anyway, it was kind of like, you know, we were kind of like, all right, well, whatever, like, let's just get on with it. But then he brings us down into the underneath the Stanley, which is built on like bedrock. So as you walk down, there's like literal boulders sticking out. And as I walk down, in my head, I see this little girl with wild hair and her eyes shine, just like lean back down as if we'd like caught her in the act, or like as if she was like kind of looking to see who's coming.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, you big idiot, you're just spooking yourself out here. So I just walked down, I stood right at that rock. Of course, nothing happened. And then your man gives a spiel, and at the end he starts showing pictures. And sure enough, he shows me a picture of the little girl that I had seen. And when I saw it, but my blood ran cold. Like the only difference is what I saw was a moving little girl, but also her hair was a little bit wilder than in the picture. But even the picture had eye shine, and so that was like stuff like stood out. But and of course, I go to the kid like, oh, I saw her when I came down. And he looks at me like, yeah, right, yeah, whatever. But like, I need to stress, like, I've never experienced that, as far as I'm aware, before or since. But he was saying like, well, we have so many kids here, and it's because kids used to come here on their holidays. You know what I mean? And they'd be given like, okay, well, there's like one babysitter for like 15 kids or something back in the day. So of course they were causing a ruckus and just having a great time. So why wouldn't that energy still be here, you know? So whether it's the orphan kids from that horrific accident, or whether it's just some other leftover energy, I don't know. But people are having the experience, and that's all that matters.
Yeah. Because, I mean, the little girl seems to be the one, because people talk about ghostly children being at Galvez, but it's the little girl that seems to be the most famous of them, and playing with a ball as well. But people, like you say, seem to be just doing normal things in the hotel and come across it. I remember seeing an interview years ago with a guy who was doing a renovation there. And they kept having to go to the lobby and say, who keeps letting the kids down here? Because we're building. What's going on? And they're like, what are you on about? And so he tells the story and said, oh, yeah, she's not real. Just get on with it, pal. Don't worry about her. She's just a ghost. Yeah, good luck with that, mate. Yeah, enjoy that building work.
No, it doesn't surprise me. And like, I've been in those, like, I was lucky enough to work. I used to be an electrician when I was back home. One of my favorite jobs that I ever did was in one of like the older, I don't know, was it Victorian or Edwardian or whatever, but one of the old buildings anyway, around just off Grafton Street. So like literally middle of the city, like, and they were turning it into some sort of museum. It was something to do with James Joyce. This is terrible. I can't even remember what the building was, but my whole thing, there was secret staircases down into where, because they used to do lectures there. And so the priests and the lecturers used to use the secret stairs, and there was like a nook with just wall-to-wall books and lovely comfortable chairs, and there was a priest's bedroom that was left untouched, and all we were told was don't go in there. But again, it was all part of this historical preservation. And every day I went into work and I was like, today's going to be the day. We were there, we were doing overtime, we were coming in early before the sun came up, we were staying late when the sun went down, and I never had any spooky experiences. I spoke to the security guards and everything, and nothing. But yeah, so I don't know what it is, but some places just have it, I guess, you know.
Well, it is. I think this is often once again, people like to create patterns, and people like to create stories to try and give reasons, I think, Adam, or an explanation for themselves as to what's happened often. And so I think the thing about children ghosts is it depends where you are when you see one, because it's their appearance in somewhere, as I said about the guys doing the building work at the Galvez who spot one. It's when you see a child in a situation that a child shouldn't be, that you suddenly think, hang on, what's going on here? Like if you see a kid running through a building saying, like, what's going on? It's not the 1970s, you know, what's happening here?
Yeah.
It stands out. But I think sometimes if you're in that kind of environment, like a mall or a hotel or I don't know, a leisure centre or something, or a sports stadium, and you see
or a Walmart.
Yeah. A supermarket. I mean, God, Bennett, the amount of haunted supermarkets we've got in the UK, and I would imagine it's probably the same in the States, because a lot of them have been repurposed or built on things. So it's the history, not the building. This is often the thing that I find strange, that people think, well, my house can't be haunted. It's 30 years old. Well, the land's not 30 years old. And what was here before? You've no idea often. Yeah. And so they're the kind of ones that really stand out. But in normal circumstances, you see children in places, you think, that's fine. You know, just running about, keeping themselves entertained. We've all seen those parents shouting after their kids as they sprinted off towards the Disney shop or McDonald's or whatever, and the parents at 200 yards behind going, wait. And yet, the thing that often strikes these is that there isn't that parent shouting, wait. There's just a kid somewhere it shouldn't be.
Yeah, and the reason why I say Walmart is because the Galveston Walmart, a lot of people think that was the site where the orphanage actually was. But I was corrected by Jin, because I thought that as well. And it turned out the Walmart was actually where the seawall is now. But the Walmart, I mean, it's been on local news and all here, so the locals all know, don't go in there after dark, because they have their toy section is apparently rampant with paranormal activity. And like, one of the stories that always sticks out to me is that there was employees in there going like, I can hear a child crying down here. We need to find her and find her mom or do whatever. I don't know if it was a girl or a boy. And it got to the point where there was an employee on either side of the aisle, and one was going, she's over there. And the other's going, no, she's over there, like where you are. And of course they never find. But again, these poor orphans just keep catching the blame for it, you know. But like you said earlier, though, like the estimates are between 6,000 and 12,000. So whether it was the poor kids from the orphanage or the poor kids just who lost their lives regularly, you know. But yeah, like the island, honestly, if I had the money, if I was what's your man's name, Bigelow, who bought Skinwalker Ranch, maybe I'd try and like invest in like a paranormal center down there. I don't know. And then there's just the fact that there's constantly horrific weather down there, you know, like they really catch the brunt of it. Even the night I drove down with my mom, I was like, we must have looked like National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Again, we're in the Subaru Forester. I've got the roof rack on that never carries anything. Yeah. And I've got my mom in the passenger seat, my wife in the middle in the back, and my two nieces. They're my wife's nieces, so they're older. Yeah. They're 20 and 18. Yeah. Gorgeous girls. Lovely. But anyway, we're driving down, and they're always giving me death because I'm like, oh, let's just go do something. And they're like, oh, no, that's dangerous, whatever. But as we're driving down, the rain starts pelting down. Yeah. And I'm going like, I checked the weather. It's supposed to ease up by the time we hit the island. Anyway, we pulled over in Buc-ee's, which I don't know if you've ever heard of Buc-ee's. It's a gas station over here. It's fascinating. Pulled over, we all get a bit to eat, whatever. And we keep on going. And my mom is filming at this point because the weather is so bad. There's lightning and flashing. There's everything, but it's moving away. And I'm like, look, just trust me. They're all going, we need to cancel. This is a bad idea. And I'm messaging Jane, the tour guide, and I'm saying to her, like, look, as long as you're comfortable, we're going to be there, whatever. Anyway, by the time we pull in, it's dead quiet. The weather has moved on. And I'm like, you know, gloating. I'm like, see, I told you. But what it meant was, like, we got to see Galveston like right before, because there was more weather coming in. Yeah. And we were literally caught. I don't know if it was like the eye of like some smaller storm or just between two storms or what. We got the island almost completely to ourselves. And like, it's the strangest I've ever felt there. But it was also just, we were really, really fortunate. We had Jin telling us the stories as we're walking from building to building. And like, to credit Jin again, like this is a good 2 hours, probably more. And we didn't even like take a turn off one street. You know what I mean? We were literally just walking down what's known as the Strand. I think it was called 8th Avenue or something at the time, or before. But anyway, yeah. And so we got to see it. And then right before we left again, the wind started coming in. And like, again, like this is probably like dramatic on my end, but like, there was like a transformation, you know what I mean? And I'm not saying if it was paranormal or anything like that, but we got several, it was like emotional feelings, you know what I mean? As we were down there. And of course, I'm like trying to keep it lighthearted. Well, because we were all in good spirits anyway, but I was like saying to the girls, I was like, oh, come on, we leave now before the weather starts to take a turn or whatever. But no, like I can see like the energy down there is just, it's different. You know what I mean? There's something about it. And again, like I was with Houston Strange, I'm like practicing trying to like write a little bit better and being a bit more cringy or whatever. And I say in the intro to it, like when you cross that bridge into Galveston, I can't remember. I said something like dramatic, like, you know, you feel like you're placed back down on the island and something has changed. But like, I'm not joking. Like that is how it feels. And whether you're going down there for a piss up with the lads or what, you know, something changes when you're going down there. You know, whether it's you leave your regular day job behind on like back on the mainland, I don't know what it is. And now I'm curious, like I'd like to go and hang out in like Ackle Island or something off the, you know.
Yeah, and
like,
see if you got the same sort of response.
Yeah, so I don't know. Again, it's the hippie in me. I think it has to do something with the water maybe. I don't know. But this Galveston series, I thought like, oh, I'll finish it, I'll be done. That's another chapter. But like the response was, I wouldn't say overwhelming, but like very good, you know. And so there's no way that I can't go back down and do more there. I'm just trying to figure out what it is, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it is quite striking when you get that kind of emotional response to a location. I think you can go somewhere and yeah, it looks creepy, it feels creepy, but if you're in the middle of somewhere normal and you get that feeling, it for me elevates it a little bit. It's not something I've ever experienced a lot of. I have once in Scotland, to the point it made me so uncomfortable I couldn't. We were supposed to be staying there for 2 days, and we went the following day. I didn't get a wink of sleep at all. I could not get to sleep. I just didn't feel right. I didn't feel comfortable. I felt like I was being watched all the time. I was on high alert for some reason, Adam. I don't know why. You know, we're in a big holiday resort. There's loads of people. It's great atmosphere. Nothing. You know, it's a beautiful summer. Scotland, very accommodating, lovely people. I couldn't settle. Could not settle at all. And so we found another B&B, because we were basically driving around Scotland and stopping at B&Bs every 2 or 3 days and seeing the whole country. It was amazing. Loved it. But that's always stuck with me. I mean, that's 22 years ago. And I've never come across that anywhere else. I've been to some really haunted locations, UFO spotting, weird places, speaking to people in haunted houses. Nothing. That's the strangest I've ever felt, because it came from nowhere, and literally within 20 minutes of leaving that area, I felt absolutely fine. Slept like a wink the night after.
That's wild. And like, again, with Houston Strange, like when I started it, I was at a very kind of like, I guess, like skeptical place. And I still, like, I try to be, but the more and more I do it, the harder it is to be skeptical. And like stuff like that, like I'm starting to feel like kind of in myself now as well. I hate to use the word like empathic or whatever. Like I've spoken to therapists about being an empath in a non-paranormal sense. You know what I mean? I am one of those people that, like, you know, if you're having a hard time or something and we're talking as mates or whatever, like I'll carry that. Yeah. And it's something that runs in my family. I literally was talking to my mom about it recently as well. So I think like psychologically, it's very easy, or a lot of people can be empathic. But yeah, then when you do go to these places, I don't know, like, yeah, I think it has to be, and sorry, I'm falling over my own words here, but I was literally just editing the next episode of Houston Strange, which was with a girl who has a lifetime of weird paranormal stuff, but she's not really interested in it. You know, she's like trying to, I guess, keep the door closed or whatever and just live her normal. She's quite successful and very well educated, so she doesn't have the room to kind of show that or the interest in like getting into it. But she was kind of saying like, well, if you feel empathic towards people on a day-to-day, like, where does the psychology stop and the psychic begin, say? You know what I mean? And somebody else could word that a lot better, I'm sure. But it's something, especially in the last couple of months, I've been really struggling with, like, where does that line start and stop, you know?
Well, I think that's quite a sensible thought to have, Adam, because if you've got that kind of way with the living, often you would perhaps suggest that that would attract the dead, really, because they would recognise a kinship, a level of understanding, perhaps an acceptance of who they are or what they are or where they are, wherever. And maybe that's why that line is becomes so blurred, because there isn't anything that tips over. It just happens. It's just sometimes it's the dead that seem to want to unload and feel comfortable and needed and protected, and it's that pushes them towards the empaths that we know, or it intrigues those people like ourselves who have that way with people, or that level of understanding, or that shoulder to cry on, or that we can do. Despite we have our own challenges, we often find it easier to let other people unload, and we'll take theirs on, because then if we're thinking about somebody else's problems, we're not worried about our own or how our brain makes its own feel, Adam. And I'm sure you know exactly what I mean, mate.
Yeah.
And so for me, I think that's entirely sensible, because regardless of the modern scientific advancements that we see regularly, we still know very little about how the brain works and what it does, and what each receptor and synapse is there for, and things like that absolutely fascinate me is that these kind of people that have some kind of traumatic head injury, or they're struck by lightning, and their entire personality changes because they've been rewired. They suddenly wake up and they've got a new talent, or they can speak a different language, or they have different interests from before their injury, or they become incredibly talented musicians or whatever. It is remarkable, the capacity of what the brain can do, even in the world of reality, when we're talking about skills, language, ability, knowledge. The longer we examine these kind of aspects of our own physiology, I think more layers will begin to unpeel, because clearly everybody's different in a variety of ways, because at the end of the day, we're just a bag of electronics inside a skin and bone. That's all we are, really.
Yeah, no, I think you're definitely onto something, because, and even in that interview with Gabriella, her name was, funny that you say like being a bag of electronics. She was, as you were talking about this, she was literally saying, and it's something I never thought of, and I was really annoyed that I didn't think of it first, but have you ever had like a TENS machine, I think they're called?
Yes.
Literally, yeah, you slap the pad on, electrocute you or whatever. So I use one of them. My current job like is quite physically demanding, like a lot of lifting and straining and stuff.
Yeah.
So every now and then, and I'm sitting here constantly, hunched over like some sort of creature. But no, so I'll slap one of them on my shoulders, my neck, whatever. And whether it really works or not, I don't know, but it feels better. But she was saying that her husband, he plays some sports of some sort, and he would use one, and he has it on the highest setting, like say it's on his leg or his arm or whatever, but she can only use it on the first setting. And she was saying, like, so if she's a sensitive person, quote unquote, why wouldn't she be sensitive in other ways? You know what I mean? And then I was kind of drawn, like, this is probably going out on a limb, but I was, what do ghost hunters use and stuff? Everything is electronic instruments that are supposed to catch, whether it's temperature or pressure changes, or like EMF disturbances and stuff. And I don't know, it was an interesting point that she made, and I was like, this is something that I want to study now more. I'm not going to go around just start electrocuting mediums and see
how sensitive they are.
Yeah, but I did think it was interesting, because if it is a change in the electromagnetic field and that's all it is, and then that's tricking our brain into thinking that we're hearing or seeing something, why wouldn't that directly correlate to sending electrical signals into your muscles and why you're more sensitive, Again, it's one of those weirder things that I need a scientist or somebody, to talk me out of. But I thought it was interesting,
I'm just imagining you doing the Zephyr scene from Ghostbusters, and you acting like Bill Murray electrocuting mediums.
That's it.
Is it three wavy lines? No. Spit the chewing gum out at you.
Yeah. I'm telling you, sometimes I feel like I'm getting to that point, I swear.
But I think it's a valid point, because at the end of the day, this is one of the things that's indisputable. And we're energy, and energy cannot be destroyed. So where does it go? It must go somewhere. Now, I'm not suggesting that it means everybody turns into a ghost. It must dissipate and be absorbed by other things.
Yeah.
But we know some people are more sensitive to electronics than others. It's just the way of the world. It's genetics. It's the way people are created. Certain people are really sensitive. There are numerous stories of people who touch a microwave and it blows up, or they get headaches when the Wi-Fi's on.
Yeah.
These are, regardless, just because we can't see, there's electronics and waves of all magnitudes just bouncing through us, around us, at every minute of every day that we're alive, wherever we are in the world, Adam. And so for me, I think it's that kind of avenue that may lead us to understand why it happens to some people and not others. Because surely if it was a basic responds to EMF in the environment, it would affect everybody the same. And yet, clearly it doesn't, because you will have incidences, and I'm sure these have happened in some of the locations you visited, where you'll have groups of people, like you were talking about the little girl at the Stanley. You went down there. How many people were in your group?
Yeah, at least I'd say 15 or 20 people, yeah.
You saw something the others didn't. Why?
Yeah, exactly. And it's annoying now because I can't really talk too much about the investigation that I was just on, just because it wasn't my thing. But what was really interesting in that hotel that we were in, the guy claims, I don't know, I haven't seen behind the walls, but he claims in like the downstairs hallway, he's essentially made it like a Faraday cage, to where like he struggles, like he can't get Wi-Fi in certain rooms and stuff like that. But he's done it on purpose. Basically, when he bought the hotel, there was a lot more work than was advertised needed done to it.
Yeah.
And he's a ghost hunter for like, you know, I don't know, he was a little bit older than myself, and he's been doing this for a long time. So he's trying to kind of make himself a perfect like examination point, really. Yeah. So certain rooms you can go in and like, you know, there's no phone signal, stuff like that. And what I found really interesting, and this only came out like post-edit, and I'm really annoyed because I need to have a conversation with the people behind it, because obviously we couldn't understand at the time. I had set up a camera in one room where they were doing like an Estes style session. And while that was happening, I took the other half of the group because they were all starting to fall asleep. And I was like, well, come on, we'll go down directly underneath them and we'll just do our own thing. And when I put the two videos simultaneously, the questions we were asking appeared to be being answered upstairs, to the point where, like, as we walked into the room directly below, the guy with the Estes session, and as well, they didn't even know. They just thought we were taking a break or something. Yeah. The guy just started going, who's that? And, you know, introducing himself, weird stuff. But then when we were in this, you know, supposed Faraday room, we were in a different room again, and the security cameras, we were monitoring it. So it was a really interesting experiment to do. But again, they were kind of in the Estes thing, and we would say, like, you know, oh, touch him on the neck. And sure enough, like a few minutes later, this would kind of happen. Now, sure, it could have been coincidence, but then we sent another guy in who's hard of hearing, and the radio wasn't working for him. But we had a little bell set up that is controlled by EMF, like fluctuations, you know?
Yeah.
And the bell started working when the deaf guy who couldn't hear went into that room. But our phones wouldn't work in that room or anything, you know what I mean? So we were kind of going, well, does this really prove anything, or does it just like add more to this bag of nonsense that we're trying to get through? You know, I don't know, but it's definitely something strange with, and I do think it's electrical or it's atmospheric or something.
Yeah.
Whether it's being manipulated or we're all just shouting in dark rooms, who knows? You know?
Very true. I must admit, I used to be very sceptical about the Estes method. I mean, I'm not all in on it, because I know, as with anything, Adam, it can create a false narrative in your own mind, I think. But I think if you're doing it and you don't know where you are or what a location's history is, and especially I always used to think, people will be able to hear, people will be able to see, and I couldn't hear or see anything other than what was coming through the earphones. And the strangest thing about doing that was, I thought I'd done it 5 minutes. It was 45 minutes I was at it. It literally just flew by like no tomorrow. And so it is a strange thing. And I think, as with anything, like you say, it's just another strand to the strangeness. I think the biggest problem we often have is that we always want to know why. Why does that happen? Why have we put our faith in electronic phenomena, which often hasn't been tested? We're not sure what it does. And sometimes you can be quite cynical about ghost hunting equipment. And I know some people just won't use any of it. They'll use sort of construction measuring devices that they use in the building industry for testing for EMF and things like that. And obviously checking your walls for water pipes and electronic pipes. You know, you obviously don't want to be drilling or knocking through anything like that. And so I know a few people who prefer to use things that haven't been designed for ghost hunting but do the same thing. And so it's a strange thing, I think, too. Sometimes you can put too much faith in things that you don't actually understand how they work. But yet, when you go the opposite way, and like you say there, trying to create your own Faraday cage because you are trying to kill that potential of interference, then that, for me, is far more fascinating than somebody walking around with cat balls and EMF readers trying to talk to somebody. Because unless they know exactly what the wiring is like or how that building works, or they've done a sweep with normal EMF detectors, then I'm always going to take everything else after that with a pinch of salt, because I am, despite coming across as a very believable person, I like to think I've got two foots in both camps, because the idea of being a skeptic is to question things, not as a dogma, but as a rational person, because you can't just jump to the paranormal if you think, oh, well, why's that book fallen off the shelf? Oh, well, it must be a ghost. Is it? Is it the type of cover? Has a heavy truck gone past? Has one of your pets been sat behind it, patting it, and you've not really noticed it, and it's just dropped off? Is it just gravity? There are certain things that sometimes the excitement or the location overtakes your sense, and you suddenly ignore the rational explanations and leap to the fantastical. And I think sometimes you have to go through all the hoops, and whatever's left, then it starts becoming strange. But if you've not done all that, then leap into that straight away, I'm like, well, I'm not interested. Sorry.
Yeah, no, and like it's one of the main reasons why I kind of fell off with the ghost investigation thing. Anyway, like I never really did it. Like we've been to a few haunted locations, especially like, you know, when you're traveling or whatever and you see something cool pop up. Like me and Dulce were really lucky. We got to do a night on Spike Island. Just off the coast of West Cork. Yeah,
I know it well. I've just watched a programme about it.
Oh yeah, and it's like, look, talk about putting you in the mindset to experience something, like 100%. But I've also, like, I have been the one to get carried away when something happens, especially when you're in a spooky location in the middle of the night and you're kind of going, oh my God, like it's a ghost, it's this or it's that. Last night, I was, I came home earlier than my father-in-law, and as I walked in, the cats started panicking. I had an earphone in and I was like, what the fuck is going on here? And so I take it out and I hear this noise that I've convinced I had never heard this noise before. I'm like, what was that? And I go over and I'm checking the kitchen. I'm looking out to see, like, is it the dogs? Is it what? My father-in-law comes in about 2 minutes later and I'm going, oh, the cats like heard something weird, because I was looking out the window at this point. And he goes, oh, the chickens haven't been put away. It's the same noise that I've heard every time the chicken jumps up onto the windowsill. Because we've like 5 chickens out the back, 3 eggs. It's great. Yeah. But we put them away every night, and last night we just hadn't, because we were both working late. And so that was the perfect example of something that I was completely familiar with, something that I knew the answer to, but my mind jumped straight to, I've brought something home from a haunted location, or we're being broken into. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah. And in those 30 seconds, it was me overreacting and looking like a fool.
Happens to the best of us. We've all been there, Adam. Anybody who says they haven't is either a liar or a fool.
Yeah, yeah. But no, that was a good example. And then, like, again, that hotel that we were at, like, one of the, I think my time in the paranormal, I don't know if that's what you can call it, whatever, like the few years that I've been like really invested in this stuff, has taught me like that patience is something that you need. Like, you know, you might pick up something in one location or like a one random day, and it takes 2 years, and then you join the dots and you're going, oh my God, I think this was the connection. Maybe not, whatever. But also like the multiple experiencers experiencing something different at the same time seems to be like a consistent thing for me. And I think that's where like the naysayers really come in and say like, oh, well, then you're both just full of shit. Like neither of you experienced anything. Me and Dulce, and I might have told you this before, but me and Dulce and my 2 younger sisters were back home one day looking for a castle, which I'm now convinced is like some sort of weird fairy ring. But anyway, we were trying to find this castle ruin, and it's in like private property. So we were trying to be sneaky about it, but it was broad daylight. All this stuff, and we couldn't find it. Like every time we saw it, we couldn't figure out how to get into it. I'd been there before. Anyway, all this stuff. And so eventually we were like, oh, well, like, sure, look, we've had this nice walk through the woods, whatever. It wasn't not even a proper woods. Like there was a pathway through it, like an actual like tarmac Adam pathway. And we could see houses and all. Anyway, me and my youngest sister are about maybe 50 feet ahead of Dulce and my middle sister. And as we're walking, I hear a car door slam. Keep walking, think nothing of it. There's houses all around us. But Dulce and my other sister react like scared little girls. And they were going, did you just hear that? Did you just hear that? And I was saying, like, what are you talking about? And they go, something growled from the woods. And I was going, there's nothing even living in that woods that could growl at you. You know what I mean? But sure enough, then like a few months later, I'm listening to one of John Keel's books. I can't remember which one. It might have even been Mothman Prophecies. I don't know. And he explicitly says people who have alien encounters or, UFO or ghost encounters, whatever, fairy encounters have often reported hearing two things simultaneously, one of them being car doors slamming.
Yes.
And this is like a specific thing. And then since then, I've heard like Timothy Renner talking about it on Strange Familiars and stuff like that. But it happened again the other night. Not in the same kind of sense, but we were all in a room. There was a person in like a kind of a trance-like state. It wasn't quite Estes. They were listening to like binaural stuff, but they had lights on their face, a complete almost sensory deprivation. And it's pushing 4 a.m. Everybody's tired. I'm standing in the doorway, but in the room. And all of a sudden I can see the people reacting to something. I haven't heard anything, but I had heard other stuff throughout the night that other people weren't reacting to. So I was like, oh, we're all just tired, whatever. And they start going, did anybody else hear that? There was a whisper, like, oh, it must have been the girl in the chair, like she did it unconsciously or whatever. So, of course, the session wrapped up, and thankfully I had the camera. We went back downstairs. I always overpack, so I had like laptops, hard drives, whatever. We dumped the footage, pull it up. I zoom in on her face. Her mouth isn't moving. But sure enough, something or someone whispered, okay, in there. I didn't hear a thing. You know what I mean? Everybody else did. We caught it on camera. We don't know. You know what I mean? It was just one of those things where it was made all the stranger because I thought they were all just, full of it. At that moment, I just thought like, oh, no, we're all just tired. And then we had kind of evidence to like back it up. So I was kind of going, okay, well, maybe there's something here. I don't know. But then what also made it interesting was the people who heard it from different parts of the room. And obviously the mic on the camera is a pretty cheap mic. It's just a directional mic, so I couldn't tell. But, it just added to that kind of weirder aspect of things, whether it was a ghost or whether it was one of us, I don't know. But it was the multiple people experiencing things differently,
I suppose, as you mentioned, in regards to this, the ghosts always come first, but then the other bits coming up. As we've touched on, you're going to be doing an episode about Bigfoot soon. I mean, sometimes, are you intrigued about, as I mentioned, places that have these histories of even stranger phenomena, such as Marfa or Lubbock, and obviously Texas is renowned for some very odd UFO sightings over the years. Houston especially would seem to be one of the more popular places that the aliens like to fly over and see what's going on in that particular area, Adam. So with this, is it a case of you're wanting to look at even stranger things, or are you happy staying in your wheelhouse of paranormal adjacent cryptids?
I think like the people who listen are more inclined to want a good ghost story, which I can't argue with. Who doesn't love a good ghost story? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But my personal interests are by far way stranger. And I do think like, because I'm sure you've heard of the Houston Batman. I touched on it briefly in So apparently there's been more sightings of that lately. I don't know how true that is or what, but there was guys, and I can't think of the name now, another podcast anyway. And I did reach out to them and, it just didn't work out. But they came across a story of a NASA employee who had witnessed what he called a gargoyle. Now, like at the NASA Space Center here in Houston. I mean, it's just outside Houston, but like the kind of running joke is Houston is an hour from Houston, because that's just how it goes. Like, but yeah, and so funnily enough, I was just down there recently because my mom wanted to go. My mom's teaches kids like young, what's the Montessori kids or something like that, play school.
Yes.
So she wanted to go and get like some trinkets and like pictures of the rockets and stuff,
Yeah.
So I said, yeah, like come on, we'll go down. There's no hassle. And it ended up being, we'd been there once before, but the time we went before, we had our niece, my Irish niece, who was very young. So it was more just following her around and trying to make sure she wasn't, this time we went down and we were able to actually take in everything. We did the little tours and it was fascinating. And it was only as I was leaving, I realized, hold on a minute, this is where the gargoyle was seen. But yeah, this guy, he was supposedly like an engineer or something. And he arrived home one night. I think his house was actually in like the heart of Houston. And again, don't quote me on any of this, but he arrived home and his wife and daughter like could see that he was visibly shaken by something, whatever had happened. Like, and I don't think he told them the first time. He just said, "Oh, like it's fine, it's whatever. Like, let's just go to bed." But it happened again, at least one other time, and he saw this bizarre creature, and like then he told his wife, and then the daughter, whenever she was old enough, eventually heard the story, but like he wouldn't tell anyone because he was terrified that he was going to lose his job. You know what I mean? Like he had a pretty well-to-do job at NASA, which you can't really mess around in.
No.
And coming in telling them, "Oh, didn't anyone else see the gargoyle in the car park?" But I'm not unconvinced that this and the Batman thing are the same thing. And I also don't know that they're cryptids necessarily. Like the thing that sticks out to me about the Batman thing, and maybe it's because it was reported, I think, in the 50s.
Yeah.
And in my head, I'm thinking like, well, comic book style in the 50s and rocketry and stuff like that. But they said that he had a paintbrush-shaped flame that propelled him out of the tree.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of going, well, this is like very time proficient. You know what I mean? Like this would have been like that kind of style, right? Like UFOs and stuff like that. And now I'm wondering if people were to see that in this day and age, would we see something similar but kind of different? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
maybe there wouldn't be a huge flame shooting out the back. Maybe it would just be floating off. And would we think it's just a drone? I don't know. But like, I've seen what are they called? The Black Hawk helicopters.
Yeah.
Doing low flybys here with no lights on at night. They're doing drills and stuff like that. Like, it's jarring. Like, just recently I was talking to one of the girls after work, and, you know, big empty car park or whatever. So if ever I see any of the girls walking on it, like, I'll just go with them, like, to their car or whatever.
Yeah.
And anyway, we got chatting afterwards. She was parked beside me, so we were talking. And then all of a sudden we couldn't hear each other. And like 5 helicopters in formation just do a low flyby over. And, you know, I was able to see on some Facebook group or other, because people are always so like, oh, of course I knew what it was, you know. But they were like, are you dumb? This is the military doing drill. And obviously I knew it was helicopters. But yeah, so the military do actively do drills over Houston. So there's a town, I'm really struggling to think of the names now. I've been to so many small towns in the last few weeks. But and this was a really funny, unique experience. But I went out there because there was a UFO story. I'm sure you've heard of it. Again, Huffman, I think, was the name of the town. Anyway, this grandmother and her friend and the grandson, it was around Christmas time, and they were trying to go to a bingo hall. And so they're driving back roads out there, and they go to one bingo hall, but because it's near Christmas, it might have even been Christmas Eve or something. Bingo hall is closed. So they say, right, well, come on, we'll motor on up. Sorry. Come on, we'll go on over to, you know, the next town, and we'll check their bingo hall. So they're on this back road, Dayton, Texas. So yeah, not Denton, which is just outside of Dallas, but Dayton. Anyway, they're on their way over. Next thing, this, you know, ship comes flying over them. Big, huge, bright light. The granny's friend is some sort of, you know, super Christian. So she literally goes, oh my God, it's Jesus. This is my time. So they've stopped the car and they're looking at this thing. This lady gets out of the car and she walks out and she's ready. Like, you know, take me. I'm free of sin or whatever. The other woman just gets out because she's kind of blown away. She's like, what is this thing in the air?
Yeah.
And the grandson stays in the car. Anyway, with that, these helicopters swarm and they escort this thing, which is supposedly like limping in the air, like it's struggling or whatever. But they follow it for a little while, supposedly, until they can't follow it anymore. The next day, or like over the next few weeks, they have, you know, I say typical, but typical if you're a UFO nerd, but they have like, you know, pink eye and stuff like that, which is common radiation sickness and stuff.
Yeah.
All of them suffer from it. But more so the 2 women, and especially the one who was closest to the ship or whatever it was. So anyway, some people reported that it actually hit the deck and crashed. I don't know how true that is. But I go up to this town because I got working with an older gentleman who was not really into any of this, but like casually dropped one day, you know, I went to school with a guy who saw a UFO, brother. Turned out he'd grown up in this town and he knew the guy that was in the car, the kid.
Yep.
Now, Uncle Carl, as I call him, he was like maybe 10 years older than the kid at the time. So he was went to the same school, but not at the same time.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I was like, well, look, I can't find any more modern stuff about the place. So let me just go up there and check it out. So I'm literally hanging around outside the barbecue joint up there, waiting for someone. I spoke to the people inside. They're all kids. They look at me like a lunatic because I look like this. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, and I talk funny, all that kind of stuff. But I go out and I'm sitting in the car and I'm kind of, okay, today was a bit of a bust. I'm going to go back home. And it's hot. Like, it's always hot. So I'm like sweating. And there's a guy and his partner sitting in their truck smoking cigarettes. So their window was down. So I was like, they're waiting for their lunch or whatever. So I was like, I'm here now. Let me just approach them and ask. And I said, like, no, I was wondering, have you guys heard of such and such a story? I think it happened in whatever year. I got the year wrong. The guy's just looking at me. He hadn't said a word and he just goes, it was 1988 or whatever year it was. So I was like, okay, I'm onto a winner here. And he starts telling me, yeah, my dad was in the military and, you know, they were just knew that there was some sort of cover up. They weren't told all what it was. But supposedly that night that the incident happened, a bunch of military trucks showed up. Now, the grandmother and her friend were long gone at this point, you know, but the military showed up with fresh tar macadam in stone and gravel. Yeah. And they are the ones who fixed the road, which was closed off. Next thing, I'm following this guy's pickup truck down this back road. And he, like, it was, you know, he was a lovely guy or whatever. He gave me his contact details. He didn't want to talk about it afterward. Like, he didn't want to be recorded or anything, which is very frustrating, obviously, for me and for people who want to hear the story. But I do plan on going up and pursuing it more. I feel like if I get them in person again, they'll be more inclined. Yeah. But yeah, I follow him down and he points out, now maybe he was just having a joke, but I don't think so. Like, he seemed really legit. He pointed to a place where the tar macadam is 2 different colors on the road, and he swerved into the grass and just pointed at it from his truck bouncing down the road and then just kept going because like they had hot barbecue in their car, you know. So yeah, to answer your question, I'm very much interested in that. Yeah. Specifically that case, obviously it was government related. I don't know if it was all government, if it was just a test that went wrong. Yeah. I don't know. I don't think we'll ever have the answer, but just fascinating. I've had a couple of people reach out from that area kind of saying like, oh yeah, well, like when I grew up with my dad's, there's a lot of like trailer homes on lots up there, not necessarily ranches. And a lot of people would say like that they experience weird stuff. It's because if you smoke cigarettes or if, you know, maybe you're drinking or whatever, that's when people see them because that's when people are out in their garden. Do you know what I mean? That's when they're reclining in their deck chairs or, you know, so yeah, I'm not surprised. And although I'll take all of these things with a pinch of salt, I definitely think there's something weird going on up there, whether it's governmental or otherwise. But I'm going to go back up and try and find more. Yeah, soon, hopefully. Yes.
Well, the first time we spoke, I frightened you with my autistic ability to remember dates, Adam.
Yeah.
And so I will tell you, it was December the 29th, 1980, and you're talking about the Cash Landrum case.
Cash Landrum, yeah.
Betty Cash, Vicky Landrum, and Colby Landrum was the child.
Yeah, and Colby is still around. Yeah. I'm actually friends with him on Facebook.
Wow.
Yeah, but I haven't managed to speak with him yet. You know what I mean? He seems to be living an alternative lifestyle.
Yes.
So he seems to be a hard man to pin down in a single place for right now. But I really feel like if I just go up there and put in more time, like local time, I think we can get something out of it. But
absolutely,
you know, like all the cases though, or I don't even like calling them cases, all the stories, I want to treat it with like, you know, a level of respect and make sure that, you know, I'm not up there to make fun of anyone, but like this is an interesting story and I feel like it should be shared, you know.
Absolutely. I mean, it's famous for numerous things, like you say. It is one of my favourite cases of the last 50 years as well, Adam, because we've got interviews with Betty and Vicky. I mean, it's famous. It's probably the case that made me realise that Philip Klass was a awful person who would lie about anybody just to take his sceptical point.
Right.
Because he's, you know, that's the first time I came across him basically saying that these women were idiots, they were liars, I think he claimed that Vicky Landrum's doctor wasn't a real doctor. Because obviously they were both admitted to hospital, suffering from symptoms very similar to radiation poisoning, and famously tried to sue the government for damages because of their illness. And that's where the black helicopter story came up. And that's where people started going, hang on a minute, there's a little bit more to this. Because first of all, they said, no, there was nothing happening. And then they went, yes, they were doing a military exercise. That's what you saw. Once again, you're stupid people who don't know what a helicopter is.
Yeah. And it's something that, like, I've not, like, it's the same in, I'm assuming, I'm from Dublin, so a relatively small, especially for a capital city or whatever, but, like, I didn't grow up in a small town. Like, we were right beside the city. But I'm sure the same can be said for any small town in any country. You have someone coming in from the big city, like, they're straight away, you're going to be on guard, like, defensive, because anyone can come across condescending. And I actually just read a book. I'm sure you've heard the Secret History of Bigfoot. I don't know. Has that cropped up? Yeah. So I just read that, and it was, very good. But, like, this guy thought, this is just personal opinion here. Apologies if he ever hears this. But my impression that I got was he was, like, stepping down to be with the blue collar guys. You know what I mean? And he made it very clear in the book, like, I'm just one of the guys, like, I'm not some airy fairy. I think he went to college in Boston or something. Yeah. But all he did was bolster down that stereotype of, I'm better than you, and now I'm coming in here with my big fancy education. And people in small towns, or people say who didn't go to college, like myself, like, straight away, like, you're going to be more defensive. And I think that's when a lot of stories fall apart, because the further you try to defend either side, a lot of the time you end up falling more and more into these stereotypes. All of a sudden now you are a country bumpkin, and here is some elite from Harvard or wherever coming in, and so I think that's an unfortunate thing that is going to keep happening. I think probably more so nowadays.
Absolutely. Yeah. Book smart doesn't mean intelligent often, and certainly doesn't mean you've got a good way with people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, Adam, it's been lovely to have a real good chat with you about all kinds of weird and wonderful things.
Yeah.
Where can everybody find your shows, both Weekly Creep that you do with your lovely wife Dulce, and obviously Houston Strange that you've now into your second season? How can they track you down, keep up to date with you, and follow everything you do online between you both?
Yeah, I mean, Weekly Creep on Instagram, Houston Strange is on Instagram. TikTok is kind of the most receptive place for it right now, which... It's just funny because I don't use TikTok, so I'm really bad at it. But and now I can upload full episodes there. So I think a lot of people end up spending a lot more time than they planned sitting on the toilet watching an entire episode. But so TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, you can listen, you can watch, you can do whatever. When I'm editing them, it's primarily a video podcast, but when I edit it, I try to keep the audio listener in mind as well, Yeah. Anywhere. But Paul, thanks so much for having me on. I've been listening to Ghost Story Guys a lot recently as well on these longer drives. So sometimes it's funny because, like, you forget that it's not a phone call. And I'll be giggling away to myself or so no, it's lovely to actually just chat in person again. And we won't leave it so long the next time, hopefully.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure for me as well. Please send my very best to your partner and your variety of pets and family members. And I wish you the very best. And like you say, let's hope we speak again soon. And I look forward to your next episode and see which terrifying tales you tell me from Texas.
Thank you very much, Paul.